Ruth's knees hit the frozen ground. Her children's hands slipped from her grip as she held up her wedding ring to the stranger, the last piece of her dead husband she owned. "Please," she whispered through cracked lips. "Take my children. I can't watch them starve anymore." The rancher looked at her ring, then at her hollow face, then at the two small figures trembling behind her. His answer would haunt Cedar Bluff for the next 50 years. Subscribe to our channel and stay until the end to discover what this lonely cowboy said that changed 4 lives forever. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The wedding ring burned cold in Ruth's palm. 6 miles. She'd walked 6 miles through February snow with 2 children who hadn't eaten in 3 days. Grace had stopped crying somewhere around mile 4. Jesse hadn't spoken a single word since they left the abandoned miner's cabin that morning. Ruth's boots were stuffed with newspaper. It didn't help. Her toes had gone numb 2 miles back, and now she couldn't feel her feet at all. Just the mechanical motion of one step, then another, then another. The Harding ranch gate rose before her like a judgment. She'd heard stories about Elijah Harding. A hard man, they said. Fair, but hard. Lost his wife and baby years back. Kept to himself. Ran the biggest cattle operation in the Wyoming Territory. Rich. That was the word that mattered. Rich meant food. Rich meant warmth. Rich meant her children might survive the week. Ruth pushed through the gate. The hinges screamed in the silence. "Mama!" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby. What if he says no?" Ruth had no answer for that. She'd rehearsed this moment for 3 sleepless nights, practiced the words until they lost all meaning. But she'd never let herself imagine what came after no. The ranch house sat 200 yards ahead. Smoke curled from the chimney. Lamplight glowed warm behind frost-covered windows. Ruth stopped walking. Her legs wouldn't move. 3 nights of planning, 6 miles of walking, and now her body simply refused. The snow reached her ankles. The wind cut through her thin cotton dress like it wasn't there at all. "Mama!" Jesse tugged her hand. His first word in 2 days. "Mama, you're shaking." She was. Her whole body trembled, and not just from the cold. "I'm about to give away my children." The thought hit her like a physical blow. She'd told herself this was survival. Practical. Necessary. But standing here with Grace's mittened hand in her left and Jesse's bare fingers in her right, the truth couldn't be denied anymore. She was about to beg a stranger to take her babies. And if he said yes, she would walk away and never see them again. "Ruth Ellen Crawford," she whispered to herself. "You will not fall apart. Not yet. You can fall apart later. Right now you walk." She walked. The barn door opened when she was 50 feet from the house. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, carrying a saddle over one arm. He stopped when he saw them. Ruth stopped too. For a long moment, neither moved. The wind howled between them, carrying snow in horizontal sheets. Ruth couldn't see his face clearly through the white blur, but she felt his eyes on her. On the children, taking in every detail of their desperation. He set the saddle down on a fence post. He walked toward them. Ruth's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd imagined this meeting 100 times. A servant answering the door. A housekeeper to plead her case to. Not this. Not the man himself emerging from the storm like something out of a fever dream. He stopped 3 feet away. Ruth looked up. Elijah Harding had a face carved by weather and grief. Lines deep around pale blue eyes. A jaw shadowed with several days' growth. Silver threading through dark hair at his temples. He was older than she'd expected, 40, maybe more. But he stood like a man who'd spent his life bending the world to his will. "Ma'am?" His voice was low, rough. "You lost—" Ruth opened her mouth. The speech she'd prepared dissolved on her tongue. Her voice cracked. "Mr. Harding, The words wouldn't come. 3 days without food had left her lightheaded. The cold had seeped into her bones, and the weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She did the only thing her body would allow. She sank to her knees in the snow. Please. The word came out broken. Please, I'm begging you. She held up the ring, Thomas's ring, the one he'd placed on her finger 8 years ago in a Kansas church with wildflowers on the altar and his mother crying in the front pew. Take my children. Elijah Harding didn't move. They're strong. Ruth continued, the words tumbling out now in a desperate flood. Grace can read and write. She's good with numbers. Jesse. Jesse doesn't talk much, but he works hard. He never complains. They won't be any trouble. They'll earn their keep. I swear to you, they'll earn their keep. Mama. Grace's voice shattered. Mama, no. Please, no. Ruth couldn't look at her. If she looked at her daughter, she would lose what little strength she had left. I can't. Ruth's throat closed. I can't feed them anymore. I've tried everything. I sold everything. This ring is all I have left, and it won't buy enough flour to last a week. She finally looked up at the rancher. His face was unreadable. Please, Ruth whispered. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking you to save my children. Take them. Raise them. Give them a chance. And you? The question caught her off guard. What happens to you? Elijah's voice held no judgment, just curiosity, like he was asking about the weather. Ruth blinked. I don't. You walk 6 miles in a blizzard to give me your children. Then what? You walk 6 miles back. Sleep where, eat what? She hadn't thought about that. She truly hadn't. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she'd assumed she would simply stop existing once the children were safe. That her story would end here in the snow, and it wouldn't matter because Grace and Jesse would be warm. I don't know, she admitted. Elijah studied her for a long moment. Then he reached down and took the ring from her palm. Ruth's heart stopped. He turned the ring over in his fingers, examining it in the fading light. A simple gold band worn thin from years on her finger. Worth maybe $5 to a jeweler. Worth everything to her. Thomas Crawford. Elijah read the inscription inside. 1871. My husband. The words came out hollow. He died in the mines, 18 months ago. Elijah nodded slowly. Then he handed the ring back to her. Ruth stared at it, not understanding. I don't want your ring, Mrs. Crawford. The ground shifted beneath her. The rejection she'd dreaded finally here. Please. She could hear herself begging. Hated herself for it couldn't stop. Please, I'll do anything. I'll work. I'll scrub floors. I'll... Stand up. The command cut through her panic. Ruth looked up confused. Stand up, ma'am? His hand extended toward her, calloused, scarred, steady. Ruth took it. He pulled her to her feet like she weighed nothing. For a moment they stood face to face in the howling wind. Ruth's hand was still clasped in his, and she could feel warmth, actual human warmth, seeping through her frozen fingers. I don't take children away from their mothers, Elijah said. Ruth's hope died. Then, I'll take all 3 of you. The world stopped. Ruth heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They were arranged in a familiar pattern, but their meaning refused to land. What? You heard me? Elijah released her hand and turned toward the house. Come inside before you freeze. Connie's got dinner on. He took 2 steps, then stopped. Ruth still hadn't moved. Neither had the children. They stood frozen in the snow, 3 statues of disbelief. Elijah turned back. That wasn't a suggestion, ma'am. But, Ruth's voice came out strangled. But you don't even know me. I know enough. I could be anyone. I could be a thief, a liar. I could be... You walked 6 miles in a blizzard to give up your children rather than watch them starve. Elijah's eyes held hers. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Grace stepped forward, her small face fierce with suspicion. How do we know you're not a bad man? Ruth reached for her. Grace? No, Mama. Grace didn't move. He's a stranger. Papa always said don't trust strangers. Elijah crouched down, putting himself at eye level with the girl. His knees cracked. His face softened in a way Ruth wouldn't have believed possible a moment ago. Your papa was a smart man, he said. You're right not to trust me, but here's what I can tell you. He pointed toward the barn. In that barn, there's a horse named Biscuit. She's old and lazy, and she'll eat sugar right out of your hand. Behind the house, there's a chicken coop with 17 hens. They lay eggs every morning, and someone's got to collect them. Grace's eyes flickered with interest despite herself. Inside that house, Elijah continued, there's a woman named Connie who makes the best biscuits in Wyoming. And there's a room with a fireplace and a bed with real quilts that's been empty for too long. He stood up, his knees cracking again. I'm not asking you to trust me, little miss. I'm asking you to get warm. Have some food. See if you can sleep without shivering for one night. He met Ruth's eyes over Grace's head. If you want to leave in the morning, I'll give you supplies and a horse. No questions asked. Ruth's mind raced. There had to be a catch. Men didn't do this, didn't open their homes to desperate strangers without expecting something in return. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Elijah's jaw tightened. Does it matter? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. The wind had died down, and in the sudden stillness, Ruth could hear his breathing. Slow, controlled. Like a man who'd learned to keep everything locked inside. I had a wife, he said finally. Name was Martha. She died giving birth to our son 6 years ago. The boy lived 3 days. Ruth felt the words like a physical blow. This house has been empty since then. These rooms, this table, all of it empty. His voice didn't waver, but something shifted behind his eyes. I've spent 6 years trying to convince myself that's how it should be. That I deserved the silence. He looked at Grace, then at Jesse, who had pressed himself against Ruth's leg like a shadow. Maybe I'm wrong. Ruth didn't know what to say. Maybe, Elijah continued, God sent you to my gate today to show me I've been punishing myself long enough. He turned and walked toward the house without waiting for a response. Mama. Jesse's whisper was barely audible. Mama, I'm cold. Ruth looked down at her son. His lips were blue, his whole body shook. She looked at the house. Warm light spilling from windows, smoke promising heat, a stranger's back disappearing through the door. She looked at the road behind them, 6 miles of snow and darkness, and certain death. There was no choice. There never had been. Come on, she said, taking Jesse's hand. We're going inside. The warmth hit Ruth like a wall. She stopped 2 feet inside the door, momentarily paralyzed by the sensation of heat on her skin. Her eyes stung. Her fingers and toes began to throb as feeling returned. Dios mío. A woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. 58, maybe 60, with a face that had seen everything and still found room for kindness. Eli, what? She stopped when she saw the children. Her hand went to her chest. What did you do? Bring me half-frozen ghosts. This is Mrs. Crawford and her children, Elijah said, hanging his coat by the door. They'll be staying. The woman Connie Ruth remembered didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She simply moved. You. She pointed at Ruth. Sit by the fire before you fall over. You. She pointed at Grace. Help your brother out of those wet clothes. And you. She turned to Elijah with a raised eyebrow. Get me those quilts from the cedar chest, the good ones. Elijah went. Ruth found herself guided to a chair by the massive stone fireplace, a cup of something hot pressed into her hands before she could protest. She looked down. Broth. Real beef broth with fat glistening on the surface. She started to cry. She didn't mean to. She'd held herself together through everything: Thomas's death, the eviction, the slow sale of every possession she owned, the endless hungry nights, the walk through the blizzard. But one cup of broth, one act of simple human kindness, broke something loose. The tears came silently streaming down her face as she lifted the cup to her lips and drank. "Mama." Grace was at her elbow, her own eyes wide with alarm. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby." Ruth reached out and pulled Grace close with one arm still clutching the cup with the other. "Nothing's wrong. I forgot what warm felt like." Connie returned with blankets wrapping one around Ruth's shoulders and another around the children. Jesse stood like a little statue, letting herself be handled, his eyes following Elijah around the room. "There's stew on," Connie said. "You'll eat first, then we'll figure out the rest." "I don't," Ruth's voice caught. "I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't." Connie's tone was matter of fact. "Thank me by eating everything I put in front of you. I've been cooking for one stubborn man for 6 years, and it's a waste of my talent." She disappeared back into the kitchen. Ruth looked at Elijah. He stood by the window watching the snow fall outside his back to them. "Mr. Harding," he turned. "I need to understand." Ruth held his gaze. "What do you want from me? From us?" "I told you." "No." She cut him off, strength returning to her voice. "You told me about your wife, your son. You told me your house is empty. But you didn't answer my question." Elijah was silent. "I'm not a fool, Mr. Harding. I know what men want from desperate women. If that's your price, tell me now. Let me make my choice with my eyes open." The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Grace pressed closer to Ruth's side. Jesse stared at the floor. Elijah crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped in front of Ruth's chair, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "My wife was the best woman I ever knew," he said, his voice low and hard. "I put her in the ground 6 years ago, and there hasn't been a day since that I haven't wished I was in there with her." Ruth didn't flinch. "The kind of man who preys on desperate women," Elijah continued. "That's not me. That's never been me. And if you think it is, you're welcome to that horse and those supplies I mentioned." "Then what do you want?" He let out a long breath. "I want the house to smell like something other than dust. I want to hear voices that aren't mine. I want to sit down to dinner and have someone ask me about my day." His eyes moved to Grace, then to Jesse. "I want to watch children grow up. I want to teach a boy to ride. I want to see a little girl learn to read." His voice cracked just barely. "I want the things I buried with Martha to have a second chance." Ruth's throat tightened. "I'm not asking for a wife, Mrs. Crawford. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. I'm offering a roof, food, and safety. What you do with that offer is up to you." He stepped back. "Now, will you eat, or would you like to continue interrogating me?" Ruth stared at him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she laughed. It came out broken and wet, more sob than humor, but it was real. The first real laugh she'd managed in 18 months. "I'll eat," she said, "and then we'll see." Dinner was venison stew thick with potatoes and carrots. Ruth forced herself to eat slowly, knowing her stomach would rebel if she didn't. Grace had no such restraint. She shoveled food into her mouth like it might disappear, gravy running down her chin. Jesse ate in silence, his spoon moving mechanically from bowl to mouth, but his eyes never left Elijah. "The boy's staring at me." Elijah said it without looking up from his own bowl. "Jesse." Ruth touched her son's arm. "It's rude to stare." Jesse didn't look away. "Is that your wife?" He was pointing at a photograph on the mantel. A young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile captured in faded sepia. Elijah's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Yes. She's pretty. She was. Jesse considered this. My papa was handsome. Mama said so. I don't remember him much. Ruth's chest constricted. Jesse. It's all right. Elijah set down his spoon. He turned to face the boy fully, and something shifted in his expression. The hardness eased. What do you remember? Jesse thought about it. He smelled like metal, and he sang sometimes. Bad songs that made Mama pretend to be mad. Ruth covered her mouth with her hand. He sounds like a good man, Elijah said. He was. Jesse nodded solemnly. He died in a hole, in the ground. I know. Are you going to die in a hole? Jesse? Ruth's voice sharpened, but Elijah held up a hand. No, he said to the boy. I'm not going to die in a hole. I'm going to die old and stubborn in that chair over there, driving Connie crazy with my complaining. From the kitchen, Connie's voice rang out. You already drive me crazy. Jesse almost smiled. It was the closest thing to expression Ruth had seen from him in months. After dinner, Connie led them to the east wing. 3 bedrooms connected by a short hallway. A parlor with a fireplace already crackling. Quilts folded on the beds, thick, warm, handmade with care. This was going to be the nursery, Connie said quietly, touching the doorframe of the smallest room. And the children's room when they got bigger. Eli never could bring himself to clear it out. Ruth looked around. The furniture was simple, but well made. A rocking chair sat by the window, clearly built for a mother and child. A small wooden chest held toys, a carved horse, a set of blocks, a rag doll with yellow yarn hair. Martha made those, Connie said, following Ruth's gaze. Before. She was so sure it would be a girl. It was a boy, Ruth said softly. William, he lived 3 days. Connie crossed herself. That broke something in Eli, something I thought would never heal. She looked at Ruth, her dark eyes unreadable. And then you walked through his gate. Ruth didn't know what to say. I'm not... She struggled for words. I'm not here to replace anyone. I know. Connie smiled, sad and knowing. But sometimes the heart doesn't wait to be replaced. Sometimes it just opens again. She left them alone. Ruth helped Grace and Jesse into the smaller room, tucking them under quilts that smelled of cedar and lavender. Jesse fell asleep almost immediately, his small body giving in to warmth and exhaustion. Grace fought longer, her eyes following Ruth around the room. Mama. Yes, baby. Are we really staying? Ruth sat on the edge of the bed. She brushed hair from her daughter's forehead, the way she used to do when Grace was small enough to fit in her arms. For now. But what if he changes his mind? Then we'll figure something out. Grace was quiet for a moment. I don't trust him. I know. But... Grace hesitated. He was nice to Jesse. About Papa. He was. And his wife looked kind. In the picture. She did. Grace chewed her lip, wrestling with something. If he's mean to you, she said finally, I'll kill him. Ruth's heart broke and swelled at the same time. You won't need to do that, baby. But if I do, you won't. Ruth kissed her forehead. Now sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. Grace's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. Ruth sat with her children in the darkness, listening to the wind outside, feeling warmer than she'd felt in 18 months. She should sleep too. Her body screamed for it. Instead, she found herself drawn to the window. The snow had stopped. Stars emerged from behind clouds, scattered across the Wyoming sky like spilled diamonds. In the distance, she could see the faint glow of a lantern in the barn. Elijah was still awake. Ruth didn't understand him, didn't trust him, not yet, not fully. But something in her recognized something in him. The same grief she carried, maybe. The same desperate need to believe that life could mean something again. She would stay. Not forever, she wasn't ready to think about forever. But for now, for tonight, for however long he'd have them. She would stay, and she would see. Downstairs, Elijah sat at the kitchen table unable to sleep. Martha's photograph watched him from the mantel. He'd moved it there 6 years ago after the funeral and hadn't touched it since. "What am I doing?" he asked her. "What the hell am I doing?" The photograph didn't answer. "There's a woman in William's room. Children in the nursery. Strangers, Martha. Strangers sleeping in our house." He dropped his head into his hands. "But that boy," his voice cracked. "That boy asked if I was going to die in a hole. Like it was the most normal question in the world. Like he'd already lost one man and was just waiting to lose another." The fire crackled. "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have anything left to give." But when she was kneeling in the snow holding up that ring, he stopped, took a breath. "She looked like you did. That last night. When you knew and you made me promise to keep living." He stood up, walked to the mantel, touched the edge of the frame. "I broke that promise, Martha. I stopped living the day you died. Just kept moving, kept working, kept breathing, because I didn't know how to stop." His finger traced the outline of her face. "But maybe it's not too late. Maybe this is your way of telling me it's time." He turned away from the photograph. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the eastern hills. A new day. A new beginning. Elijah Harding had spent 6 years dying slowly. Maybe it was finally time to live. Ruth woke to the smell of bacon. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft. The quilts too warm. The light too gentle. Then memory crashed back the blizzard. The gate, the offer that made no sense. She sat up. Grace and Jesse were gone. Ruth's heart lurched. She threw off the quilts and stumbled toward the door. Panic rising in her throat. Voices from downstairs. Laughter, actual laughter. She descended the stairs, her bare feet silent on the wood. The kitchen table was set for breakfast. Connie stood at the stove flipping pancakes. Grace sat in a chair with a book, a real book, leather-bound with gold lettering. And Jesse was sitting on Elijah Harding's knee. The rancher was showing him something in the palm of his hand, a small carved horse painted brown and white. "See this?" Elijah's voice was soft. "I made this for—" He stopped. "I made this a long time ago, but I think it needs a boy to play with it." Jesse took the horse carefully like it was made of glass. "For me. For you." Jesse turned the horse over in his hands. His face did something Ruth had almost forgotten it could do. He smiled. Elijah looked up, saw Ruth in the doorway. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement maybe, an understanding. "Morning, Mrs. Crawford." His voice was neutral, careful. "Coffee's hot." Ruth descended the last few steps. She should say something, should establish boundaries, clarify expectations, protect herself and her children from whatever came next. Instead, she sat down at the table and let Connie pour her coffee. "Thank you," she said. Elijah nodded. And somewhere in a place neither of them could name, something broken began to heal. 3 weeks changed everything and nothing. Ruth sat at the kitchen table, ledger book spread before her, tracing Elijah's accounts with a careful finger. The numbers told a story he'd never spoken aloud, 6 years of a man who'd stopped caring whether he lived or died. "This can't be right." Elijah looked up from his coffee. "What? You've been paying Marcus Dunn $40 a month for hay." Ruth tapped the entry. "The Garrison Farm sells the same quality for $28. Marcus is a friend. Marcus is robbing you blind." She flipped back 3 pages. "And here you ordered the same shipment of fence posts twice in October. Paid for both." Elijah set down his cup. "I don't recall. You weren't paying attention." Ruth kept her voice neutral, but the truth hung between them. These books are a mess, Mr. Harding. You've lost close to $300 in the past year alone. He was quiet for a long moment. Show me. Ruth walked him through it, the duplicate orders, the inflated prices, the forgotten debts owed to him that no one had bothered to collect. By the time she finished, his jaw was tight. I've been a fool. You've been grieving. Ruth closed the ledger. There's a difference. Their eyes met across the table. Something shifted in the air, a recognition maybe. An understanding between two people who knew what it meant to lose themselves in loss. You just saved me $300, Mrs. Crawford. It's your money. I'm just organizing it. No. He leaned forward. You're making this place run like it should. Connie appeared in the doorway, pretending not to smile. If you two are done making eyes at each other over arithmetic, there's work to be done. Ruth's face flushed. We weren't. Save it for someone who's blind, Mija. Connie winked and disappeared back into the kitchen. Elijah cleared his throat. She's been waiting 6 years to say something like that. Does she always speak her mind? Always. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Martha used to say Connie's tongue was sharper than any blade on this ranch. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife without his voice going hollow. Ruth noticed. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. That evening, 4 ranch hands gathered in the bunkhouse for their first reading lesson. They were rough men with scarred knuckles and uncertain pencil grips. Walt, the youngest, at 19. Henry and Joe brothers in their 30s, and old Thomas, nearly 60, who'd never learned his letters. Ruth stood before them with a slate board, feeling like a fraud. She'd taught Sunday school back in Kansas, but that was a lifetime ago. The letter A, she began. Ma'am. Walt raised his hand like a schoolboy. Why are we doing this again? Because Mr. Harding asked me to teach anyone who wanted to learn. No, I mean... Walt scratched his head. Why do we need letters? Ain't never needed 'em before. Ruth set down the chalk. Can you sign your own name, Walt? Make my mark. X. What happens when someone puts a contract in front of you? How do you know what you're agreeing to? Walt's face reddened. I trust the boss. And if the boss isn't there? Ruth held his gaze. What if someone cheats you, overcharges you, takes advantage because they know you can't read what's written? Silence. Old Thomas spoke up. His voice graveled with decades of hard living. Lady's got a point. I lost $40 to a crooked horse trader in '72. Couldn't read the bill of sale. Found out later I'd signed away twice what we agreed. Letters are power, Ruth said simply. They're the difference between being a man who controls his own fate and a man who hopes others will be honest. She picked up the chalk again. Now, the letter A. They learned. Outside, standing in the shadows of the porch, Elijah watched through the window. Ruth's voice carried through the glass, patient, firm, encouraging. The men hunched over their slates' tongues, pressed between teeth in concentration. She belonged here. The thought arrived unbidden, and he didn't push it away. She belonged here, and he was beginning to hope she might stay. Sunday morning arrived with a sky the color of old bruises. Ruth wore the same borrowed dress from last week, clean, but plain patched at the elbows. Grace had braided her own hair crooked but proud. Jesse stood silent as ever, one hand clutching the carved horse Elijah had given him. You don't have to come, Ruth said as Elijah helped her into the wagon. Yes, I do. The town already talks. Us showing up together will only make it worse. Let them talk. He climbed up beside her, took the reins. I've got nothing to hide. The ride to Cedar Bluff took 30 minutes. Ruth spent every one of them dreading what waited at the end. She'd heard the whispers last week, seen the turned backs, felt the judgment land like stones. But that was before 3 weeks of living in his house, before the whole territory had time to spin theories about what exactly went on behind closed doors. The church sat on a small rise at the edge of town, white-clapboard, with a steeple that needed painting. Wagons already lined the yard. Families in their Sunday best milled about, greeting neighbors, trading gossip. Heads turned when the Harding wagon appeared. Ruth kept her eyes forward. Grace pressed against her side. Jesse's grip on the wooden horse tightened. "Steady," Elijah murmured. "Don't give them the satisfaction." They walked into the church like they had every right to be there because they did. Ruth chose a pew near the back. Grace slid in first, then Jesse, then Ruth. Elijah hesitated. "Sit with us," Ruth said quietly. "If you sit apart, they'll think you're ashamed." He sat. The whispers intensified. Ruth caught fragments. Living in sin. Desperate woman. Poor children, what must they think? Grace's small hand found hers under the pew. "Mama, why are they staring?" "Because people fear what they don't understand, baby." "But we haven't done anything wrong." "I know." "Then why?" "Shh." Ruth squeezed her hand. "We'll talk later." Reverend Whitmore took the pulpit. A thin man with wire spectacles and a voice like dry paper, he'd been leading this congregation for 20 years. His wife Prudence sat in the front row, her hat decorated with enough feathers to outfit a small bird. The sermon was about charity. Ruth might have laughed if it wouldn't have caused a scene. After the final hymn, the congregation filed out into the gray morning. Ruth tried to slip away unnoticed, but a hand caught her elbow. "Mrs. Crawford, isn't it?" She turned. Judge Cornelius Whitmore stood before her, the banker, the justice of the peace, the most powerful man in Cedar Bluff. He was well-dressed, silver-haired, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." He took her hand before she could refuse. "I'm Judge Whitmore. Reverend's my brother." "A pleasure." Ruth tried to withdraw her hand. He held it a beat too long. "I understand you're staying at the Harding Ranch." "That's correct." "Alone with Mr. Harding." The judge's smile widened. "A widow, 2 children, no chaperone." "Mrs. Reyes lives in the house as well." "Ah, yes, the Mexican woman." He said it like the words tasted sour. "Hardly proper supervision, wouldn't you say?" Ruth felt Elijah appear at her shoulder before she saw him. "Morning, Cornelius." The judge's smile flickered. "Elijah. We were just discussing living arrangements." "Were you?" "The town has concerns. A man of your standing sheltering an unmarried woman, it raises questions. Then the town can ask me directly instead of cornering Mrs. Crawford outside church." The two men faced each other. The air between them crackled with old tension history Ruth didn't know but could feel. "I'm simply looking out for the community's moral standards," the judge said smoothly. "Surely you understand. I understand that what happens on my land is my business. For now, perhaps." The judge's eyes glittered. "But circumstances change. Good day, Mrs. Crawford. Mr. Harding." He walked away. Ruth let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Who was that? Trouble. Elijah's jaw was tight. Old trouble I'd hoped was finished. What does he want? Nothing good. He took her elbow gently this time. "Come on, let's get the children home." They were halfway to the wagon when a voice cut through the morning. "Mama!" Ruth spun. Grace stood 20 feet away, surrounded by 3 girls her own age. One of them, a blonde in a blue dress, had Grace's braid wrapped around her fist. "Let go of me. My mother says you're trash." The blonde girl yanked harder. "She says your mama's a whore who sold herself to Mr. Harding for room and board." Ruth moved before she could think. She crossed the distance in seconds, seized the blonde girl's wrist, and squeezed just enough to make her release Grace's hair. "Don't you ever." Ruth said her voice low and dangerous. touch my daughter again." The girl's face went pale. "You're hurting me." "Good." Ruth squeezed tighter. "Then you'll remember this lesson." "Ruth." Elijah's voice was quiet behind her. "Let her go." Ruth held the girl's eyes for one more moment, long enough to make her point, then released her. The blonde stumbled backward, cradling her wrist. "You'll pay for that." She ran toward a woman in a feathered hat. Mrs. Whitmore, Ruth realized. The judge's wife. "Mother, that woman attacked me." The churchyard erupted. Voices rose. Fingers pointed. Mrs. Whitmore's shriek could be heard 3 counties over. Ruth grabbed Grace's hand. "We're leaving. Now." They moved toward the wagon, but a crowd had formed, blocking their path. Faces twisted with righteous anger pressed close. Jesse started to cry, silent tears streaming down his cheeks as he clutched his wooden horse. "See what she is!" Mrs. Whitmore's voice rang out. "A violent, ungrateful woman who repays Christian charity with assault. Your daughter called her mother a whore," Elijah said flatly. "A child learned that word somewhere, Mrs. Whitmore. I wonder where." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "How dare you?" "I dare because I saw the whole thing." Elijah stepped forward, placing himself between Ruth and the crowd. 3 girls cornering a child, hair-pulling, name-calling. And when the mother defended her daughter, suddenly, she's the villain. "She hurt my Charlotte. Charlotte will survive." Elijah's voice carried across the yard. "The question is whether this town has any decency left, or if we've all forgotten what it means to be Christians." Silence. Reverend Whitmore pushed through the crowd, his face pale. "Now let's everyone calm down. Calm down." Mrs. Whitmore whirled on her brother-in-law. "That woman assaulted my daughter. I want her arrested. I want her—" "You want what?" Elijah cut her off. "To throw a widow in jail for protecting her child. How do you think that will look?" Mrs. Whitmore sputtered. "Go ahead." Elijah spread his arms. "Have your husband arrest her. Bring it before a court. Let everyone hear exactly what your daughter said. Let the whole territory know that Cedar Bluff's finest ladies teach their children to call grieving widows whores." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "I think," Reverend Whitmore said carefully, "that perhaps we've all let our emotions get the better of us. Perhaps we should take some time to— We're leaving." Elijah took Ruth's arm. "Make a path." The crowd parted. Ruth walked through them with her head high. Grace on one side, Jesse on the other. She didn't look back, didn't acknowledge the stares or the whispers, but inside her heart hammered with fear and fury in equal measure. They'd made enemies today. Powerful enemies. The ride home was silent. Jesse fell asleep against Ruth's shoulder, exhausted by fear. Grace stared straight ahead, her jaw set in a way that reminded Ruth painfully of Thomas. "I shouldn't have grabbed her," Ruth said finally. "I made things worse." "You defended your daughter." "I gave them ammunition." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "Do you know why Cornelius Whitmore hates me?" Ruth shook her head. "He wanted to marry Martha. Asked her father 3 times. She refused him every time, and then she chose me, a rancher with dirt under his fingernails, instead of a respectable banker." Ruth absorbed this. "That was 15 years ago. Men like Cornelius don't forget." Elijah's hands tightened on the reins. "When Martha died, he came to the ranch, offered his condolences, then offered to buy my land at half its value. Said I'd want to move on, start fresh somewhere else. You refused. I threw him off my property." A bitter smile crossed his face. "He's been waiting ever since, waiting for me to fail to give up, to give him an excuse. And now I've given him one." Elijah looked at her. "You gave him nothing. He's been circling for years. If it wasn't you, it would be something else." Ruth wanted to believe him, but the cold knot in her stomach wouldn't unclench. "What will he do?" "I don't know." Elijah turned back to the road. "But whatever it is, we'll face it together." Together. The word hung in the air between them, a promise, a question, a possibility. Ruth didn't respond. But she didn't pull away either. That night she found Grace crying in her room. Ruth sat on the edge of the bed, gathering her daughter into her arms the way she used to when Grace was small enough to carry. "Talk to me, baby. They hate us." Grace's voice was muffled against Ruth's shoulder. "They all hate us, and we didn't do anything wrong." "I know. That girl Charlotte, she said I was trash. She said Papa was a nobody who died in a hole like a rat." Grace pulled back, her face streaked with tears and fury. "Papa wasn't a rat. He was brave. He worked hard. He loved us." "Yes, he did. Then why do they say those things?" Ruth stroked her daughter's hair, searching for words that wouldn't be lies. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand. They see us a widow, children, no home, no money, and they're afraid that could happen to them. So they make us into something less than human, something to look down on. It makes them feel safer. That's stupid. Yes, it is. I hate them." Ruth tilted Grace's chin up, forcing her daughter to meet her eyes. "Don't let them win, Grace Ellen. Hate will eat you alive. It'll turn you into the very thing you despise." "What am I supposed to do? Just let them hurt me?" "No, you stand tall, you work hard, you prove them wrong by living well." Ruth wiped a tear from Grace's cheek. "And when they're waiting for you to fail, you succeed. That's how you fight back." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Harding stood up for us." "He did. He was angry. Really angry." "Yes." Grace chewed her lip. "I still don't trust him completely." "That's okay. Trust takes time." "But—" Grace hesitated. "He didn't have to do that. He made everyone mad at him too. For us." Ruth nodded. "He did." "Why?" It was the question Ruth had been asking herself for 3 weeks. "I think," she said slowly, "he's been alone for a very long time. And maybe being angry for someone else feels better than being numb." Grace considered this. "Mama." "Yes, baby. I hope we can stay." Ruth pulled her daughter close and held her until she fell asleep. Then she went downstairs. Elijah sat on the porch despite the cold, staring at the stars. Ruth wrapped a quilt around her shoulders and sat beside him, closer than propriety allowed. He didn't move away. "Grace wants to stay." "What do you want?" Ruth watched her breath fog in the night air. "I want to stop being afraid. I want my children to feel safe. I want to matter to someone again." She felt him turn toward her, but she kept her eyes on the sky. "I want to believe this is real," she continued. "That I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and find out it was all a dream or a trick or some test I'm destined to fail. It's real. You can't know that. You don't know me. I know you walked 6 miles in a blizzard for your children. I know you sat in my kitchen and found $300 worth of mistakes in my books. I know you taught 4 ranch hands their letters in 2 weeks, and they call you ma'am like they mean it." Ruth finally looked at him. "I know you stood in that churchyard today and defended your daughter like a lioness. Consequences be damned." His voice was quiet but fierce. "That's not nothing, Ruth. That's everything." Her first name. He'd never used it before. "Elijah. I'm not asking for anything." He held up a hand. "I told you that the first night and I meant it. But if you're looking for a sign, for some proof that you belong here." He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand covered hers, rough, warm, certain. "You belong here, Ruth. You and Grace and Jesse. Whatever comes next, that's the truth I know." Ruth's throat tightened. "The judge will try to destroy you, because of us." "Let him try. You don't understand. Men like that. I've faced men like that my whole life." Elijah's grip tightened. I survived the war. I survived burying my wife and child. I survived 6 years of wanting to die. His eyes burned into hers. Cornelius Whitmore doesn't scare me. What does scare you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Elijah was silent for a long moment. Losing this, he said finally. Whatever this is. The way the house smells when Connie cooks breakfast. The sound of Jesse laughing in the barn. Grace reading by the fire. You sitting beside me like this. His voice cracked. I've been dead for 6 years, Ruth. Then you walked through my gate and something woke up. The thought of going back to that silence, that emptiness. He stopped. Ruth turned her hand over, laced her fingers through his. Then we don't go back. They sat that way until the stars wheeled overhead and the cold finally drove them inside. At the door, Ruth paused. Elijah. He turned. Thank you. For today. For everything. He nodded once, then disappeared into the house. Ruth stood alone in the darkness, her hand still warm where he'd held it. She was falling for him. The realization should have terrified her, should have sent her running for the safety of distance and denial. Instead, it felt like the first true thing she'd known in 18 months. She was falling for Elijah Harding, and tomorrow she would face whatever came, together. The next morning, a letter arrived. Walter brought it from town, his face grim. Ruth watched Elijah open it, watched the color drain from his face as he read. What is it? He handed her the letter without a word. Official letterhead. Bank of Cedar Bluff. Judge Cornelius Whitmore, President. Dear Mr. Harding, Ruth read aloud. It has come to our attention that the loan co-signed by yourself and the late Mr. Harold Jennings in 1874 contains provisions allowing for accelerated repayment at the lender's discretion. Pursuant to Clause 17, subsection B, we hereby notify you that the full balance of $2,400 is due within 30 days. Sincerely. Ruth's hands shook. He can't do this. He can. Elijah's voice was flat. The clause is legal. I signed it. I just never thought anyone would use it. $2,400 in 30 days. That's everything. Elijah took the letter back. The spring cattle drive won't bring half that. I'd have to sell land. That's what he wants. Yes. Ruth's mind raced. Can you fight it? Take it to another court. What court? He's the only judge in 50 miles. And even if I found another... Elijah crumpled the letter in his fist. The law is on his side. I signed the document. I agreed to the terms. You agreed 15 years ago. You couldn't have known. It doesn't matter what I knew. It matters what I signed. Connie appeared in the doorway, her face pale. I heard. How bad? Bad. Elijah threw the crumpled letter on the table. He's been waiting for this. Waiting for an excuse to crush me. And we gave him one. Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. That scene at the church? No. Elijah's hand came down on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. This isn't your fault. This is Cornelius Whitmore being the same snake he's always been. But if you hadn't, what defended your daughter existed. He shook his head. He would have found another reason, another excuse. This was always coming. Ruth looked at the crumpled letter. What do we do? Elijah was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know. It was the first time Ruth had heard him sound defeated, and it terrified her more than anything else. That afternoon, Ruth found Jesse in the barn. He was sitting with Biscuit, the old mare, feeding her sugar from his palm while she nuzzled his hair. The wooden horse was tucked in his pocket. Jesse. He looked up. His eyes were red. I heard them talking. You and Mr. Elijah. His voice was small. We have to leave, don't we? Ruth knelt beside him. Nothing's decided yet. But the bad man is taking the ranch. And it's our fault. It's not your fault, baby. It's not anyone's fault except the bad man. Jesse stroked Biscuit's nose. I like it here. I like Mr. Elijah. I like Connie and the horses and the chickens. Ruth's heart cracked. I know. I don't want to walk in the snow again. His voice broke. I don't want to be hungry again. Ruth pulled him into her arms. Listen to me, Jesse Crawford. No matter what happens, I will never let you go hungry again. Do you understand? He nodded against her shoulder. We're going to fight. Mr. Elijah and I were going to fight for this place. And maybe we'll win, and maybe we won't, but we won't give up without trying. Promise. I promise. She held him until his tears dried. Then she stood up, her jaw set with determination. She'd come to this ranch a beggar willing to give up everything for her children's survival. But she wasn't a beggar anymore. She was part of this family, whatever that meant, whatever it would become. And she would be damned if she let Cornelius Whitmore take it away. Ruth spread the ledgers across the kitchen table, her mind racing through numbers that refused to add up. There has to be a way. Elijah sat across from her, dark circles under his eyes. Neither of them had slept properly since the letter arrived 4 days ago. I've gone through it 100 times. The cattle won't bring enough. The land? We're not selling land. Ruth's voice was sharp. That's exactly what he wants. Then what do you suggest? She pulled a fresh sheet of paper toward her and began writing. The duplicate orders you paid for. Have you received refunds? No. Then we demand them. That's $68 right there. She kept writing. The debt Harold Jennings owed you before he died, his widow still has his farm. Martha Jennings can barely feed her children. I'm not saying squeeze her dry. I'm saying ask for what's owed. Even half would help. Ruth looked up. What about the hay overcharges, if Marcus Dunn has been cheating you? He hasn't been cheating me. I've been letting him. Then stop letting him. Elijah's jaw tightened. You make it sound simple. It is simple. The money exists. It's just scattered. Ruth tapped the paper. If we call in every favor recover, every overpayment sell some stock early, we'd still be 800 short. The number hung between them like a death sentence. Ruth stared at the figures, willing them to change. They didn't. What if... She hesitated. What if you took out another loan? From who Whitmore owns the only bank in 60 miles. There are other towns, other banks. None that would lend to a man with a called loan on his record. Cornelius will make sure of that. Elijah rubbed his face with both hands. He's thought this through. Every angle, every option, he's already blocked it. Ruth wanted to scream, wanted to throw the ledgers against the wall and watch the pages scatter like dying birds. Instead, she took a breath. Then we find an angle he hasn't thought of. Ruth. No. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't survive 18 months of hell to give up now. I didn't walk 6 miles through a blizzard to watch everything fall apart because one spiteful man can't let go of a grudge. Elijah stared at her. You're magnificent when you're angry. The words caught her off guard. For a moment she forgot the numbers, the deadline, the sword hanging over their heads. Don't try to distract me. I'm not. He stood, too, moving around the table toward her. I'm stating a fact. You're magnificent, Ruth Crawford, and I'm a fool who doesn't deserve you. Elijah. Let me finish. He stopped an arm's length away. 3 weeks ago I was ready to die. Not actively, I wasn't going to put a gun to my head, but I'd stopped caring whether I woke up tomorrow. The ranch was falling apart. My books were a mess. My men were leaving. And I didn't care. His voice dropped. Then you walked through my gate, half frozen, starving, ready to give up your children to save their lives. And something in me... He shook his head. You reminded me what courage looks like. Real courage. The kind that keeps fighting even when there's no hope left. Ruth's throat tightened. I'm not courageous. I'm terrified. That's what courage is. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers trembled slightly. Being terrified and fighting anyway. She leaned into his touch before she could stop herself. What are we going to do? I don't know. His hand cupped her cheek. But whatever it is, we do it together. Ruth closed her eyes. When she opened them, his face was inches from hers. Elijah, tell me to stop. His voice was rough. If this isn't what you want. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and hungry, and full of everything they'd both been denying for weeks. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. Her hands fisted in his shirt. The world narrowed to this, his mouth on hers, his heartbeat against her chest, the solid warmth of him driving back the cold that had lived in her bones for 18 months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ruth laughed. It came out broken and wet, half sob, half joy. What's funny? Nothing. She pressed her forehead to his chest. Everything. I came here to give away my children, and now I'm kissing a man I've known for 3 weeks while his entire life falls apart. Our entire life. His arms tightened around her. If you'll have it, if you'll have me. Ruth pulled back, searching his face. Are you asking? Not yet. He shook his head. Not while this mess with Whitmore hangs over us. You deserve better than a proposal made out of desperation. What if I want desperation? He smiled, really smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Then you'll have to wait, because when I ask you, Ruth Crawford, I want to do it right. She kissed him again, softer this time. I'll wait. A crash from upstairs shattered the moment. They broke apart. Ruth's heart lurched. The children. She was up the stairs before Elijah could respond. Grace's room. The door stood open. Inside, Grace knelt on the floor, surrounded by broken glass from the window. Cold wind poured through the jagged hole. Grace, are you hurt? I'm fine. Grace held something in her hand, a rock wrapped in paper. Someone threw this through the window. Ruth grabbed it, unfolded the paper with shaking hands. The message was written in crude block letters. Leave now or worse comes. Elijah appeared in the doorway. His face went white when he saw the note. Get the children, all of them, downstairs, now. Ruth gathered Grace and Jessie, her heart pounding. Downstairs, Connie had already heard the commotion and was bolting the kitchen door. What happened? Someone sent a message. Elijah showed her the rock. Through Grace's window. Connie crossed herself. Madre de Dios. Who would do this? Ruth's voice shook with anger and fear. Who would terrorize children? Dirk Sloan. The name came out of Elijah's mouth like a curse. Who? My old foreman. I fired him 2 years ago for stealing. He's been working for Whitmore ever since. You think the judge sent him? I think Cornelius wouldn't dirty his own hands. But Sloan... Elijah's jaw clenched. He'd do anything for money and spite. Jessie began to cry, silent tears streaming down his face. Are the bad men coming for us? Ruth knelt, pulling him close. No one's coming for you, baby. I won't let them. But the window was just a rock. Just a stupid rock thrown by a coward who's afraid to show his face. Grace's voice cut through, hard and fierce for an 8-year-old. If they come here, I'll hurt them. I'll hurt them like Mama hurt Charlotte. Grace. No. Grace's eyes blazed. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of people trying to make us leave. This is our home now. Ours. Ruth's heart swelled and broke at the same time. Elijah knelt beside her, putting himself at eye level with both children. Listen to me, both of you. What happened tonight was wrong. It was cowardly and cruel and wrong. But I need you to know something. He looked at Grace, then at Jessie. I will protect this family, with everything I have, with my last breath if I have to. No one is going to hurt you while I'm alive. Jessie sniffled. Promise. I promise. Elijah put his hand over his heart. I swear it on Martha's grave. The room went silent. Ruth understood the weight of those words. 6 years of grief, of guilt, of unfinished mourning, and he'd just pledged himself to her children with the most sacred oath he could offer. "Can I?" Jesse's voice was small. "Can I call you Pa now?" Something shattered in Elijah's face. Not breaking, releasing, like a dam giving way to a flood. "Yeah, son." His voice cracked. "You can call me Pa." Jesse threw his arms around Elijah's neck. Grace hesitated, then joined them, a tangle of arms and grief and hope. Ruth stood back, watching her hand pressed to her mouth. Connie appeared beside her. "You see that?" the older woman whispered. "That's a family, right there. That's what a family looks like." Ruth nodded, unable to speak. Whatever came next, whatever Whitmore threw at them, whatever Sloane tried, they would face it together. A family. Her family. The next morning, Elijah rode into town. Ruth begged him not to go alone, but he insisted. "Whitmore wants to see me scared. Wants to see me hiding. I won't give him that satisfaction." "What are you going to do?" "Talk, that's all. Just talk." He didn't come back until nightfall. Ruth met him at the door, her stomach in knots. "What happened?" Elijah's face was unreadable as he hung up his coat. "I went to the bank, asked to see the original loan documents. And Cornelius kept me waiting 3 hours. Then he came out himself smiling like a snake and told me the documents were being reviewed and couldn't be accessed." Ruth's hands clenched. "He's hiding something. Maybe. Or maybe he's just trying to rattle me." Elijah moved past her into the kitchen. "I also visited Martha Jennings." Ruth followed. "You asked about the debt?" "I told her I was calling it in." He poured himself a drink, stared at it without drinking. "She cried, told me she didn't have it. I told her I knew, and asked if Harold had left any papers, anything about the original loan." "Did he?" Elijah looked up. "Harold Jennings kept copies of everything. Martha has a box of his documents in her cellar. She's going to look." Ruth felt hope spark. If there's something wrong with the loan, some error, some illegal clause, then we might have a chance. Elijah finally drank. "But it's a long shot. Cornelius has had 15 years to make sure everything's airtight. Still, it's something. It's something." He set down the glass. "How are the children?" "Scared, but holding together." Ruth hesitated. "Jesse hasn't let go of that wooden horse all day. He asked to call me Pa." "I know." Elijah's voice dropped. "I haven't been anyone's father in 6 years. Are you having second thoughts?" "No." The word came fast and certain. "No, I'm not. I'm just—" He struggled for words. "I'm afraid I'll fail them, the way I failed William." "You didn't fail William. He was sick. I couldn't save him. That's not the same thing." Ruth moved closer, took his hand. "You didn't fail your son, Elijah. You lost him. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." She squeezed his fingers. "Failure is when you don't try. You tried. You fought. You stayed by his side for 3 days and watched him slip away because there was nothing anyone could do. That's not failure. That's love." Elijah closed his eyes. "How do you know exactly what to say?" "I don't. I just know what it's like to carry guilt that isn't mine." Ruth lifted his hand to her cheek. "Thomas died in that mine because the company cut corners, because they valued profit over safety. I blamed myself for years for not stopping him, for not insisting we stay in Kansas, for not being enough to make him choose safety over money. That wasn't your fault. I know that now. It took a long time." She met his eyes. "But I know it." They stood that way for a long moment. Two broken people learning to hold each other up. "Ruth." "Yes?" "When this is over, if we survive it, I'm going to marry you." "That's not a question." "No." His eyes burned into hers. It's a fact. She kissed him softly. Then I guess you'd better survive. 3 days later, Martha Jennings arrived at the ranch. She was a small woman, worn thin by widowhood and poverty, clutching a leather satchel like a lifeline. Ruth met her at the door. Mrs. Jennings, please come in. I found them. Martha's voice trembled. Harold's papers. He kept copies of everything, just like Mr. Harding said. And I found... She broke off, glancing around nervously. Is it safe to talk here? Elijah appeared behind Ruth. What did you find? Martha handed him the satchel. See for yourself. Elijah pulled out a stack of yellowed documents, spread them across the kitchen table. Ruth watched his face as he read confusion, then disbelief, then cold fury. Son of a bitch. What is it? He handed her a page. Ruth read it twice before the implications sank in. This isn't the same document. No, it's not. Elijah's voice was deadly calm. The original loan had no acceleration clause. None. Harold's copy proves it. Cornelius added that clause later and forged Harold's signature. Ruth's hands shook. He forged it. Look at the dates. The original was signed in May 1874. But this clause, Elijah pointed, this clause references a law that wasn't passed until 1876. Cornelius couldn't have included it in the original document. He made a mistake. He got greedy and sloppy. Elijah gathered the papers carefully. This is proof of fraud, forgery, enough to destroy him. Martha Jennings stood by the door, wringing her hands. Will this help? Will it save your ranch? It might save more than that. Elijah looked at her. Mrs. Jennings, I'm going to forget you ever owed me money. Consider the debt cleared. Martha's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Harding, I don't. You just gave me a weapon against the man who's been terrorizing this county for 20 years. That's worth more than any debt. After Martha left, Ruth and Elijah sat in the kitchen, the documents spread between them like a declaration of war. What now? I take this to the territorial marshal in Cheyenne. Have Cornelius arrested for fraud. Elijah's face was grim. But it'll take time, weeks maybe, and the loan comes due in 23 days. So we still need the money. We still need the money. He rubbed his eyes. Even with proof of fraud, the courts move slow. Cornelius has connections. He could delay proceedings for months while we lose everything. Ruth stared at the papers, her mind racing. What if we don't wait for the courts? What do you mean? The church. Ruth sat forward. Sunday service. Everyone in town will be there. Ruth. You said Cornelius has been terrorizing this county for 20 years. How many other people has he cheated? How many other debts has he called early? How many farms has he stolen? Elijah's eyes widened. You want to expose him publicly? I want to burn him to the ground. Ruth's voice was fierce. Not in some courtroom where he can buy his way out. In front of everyone he's ever wronged. Let them see what he really is. That's dangerous. If we're wrong, if this doesn't work, then we're no worse off than we are now. Ruth took his hands. Elijah, we have proof, actual proof that he's a criminal. Why let him control the narrative? Why let him paint us as the villains while he plays the righteous citizen? Because if we do this, there's no going back. We'll have declared war in front of the whole town. We're already at war. Ruth held his gaze. He threw a rock through our daughter's window. He called a loan designed to destroy us. He's been whispering poison in everyone's ears for weeks. The only difference is whether we fight back or lie down and let him win. Elijah was silent for a long moment. Sundays in 4 days. Then we have 4 days to prepare. He looked at her, really looked the way he had that first day at the gate. Like he was seeing something impossible. "I love you, Ruth Crawford." The words hit her like a physical force. "You've never said that before." "I'm saying it now." He stood, pulled her to her feet, held her face in his hands. "I love you. I've loved you since you knelt in the snow and offered me your wedding ring. I'll love you until the day I die, and probably after that too." Ruth's eyes burned. "I love you too." He kissed her deep, tender, full of promise. "Then let's go to war." The night before the confrontation, Grace had another nightmare. Ruth woke to the sound of screaming, the same dream, always the same dream. The mind collapsing, the darkness swallowing her father. She ran to Grace's room and gathered her daughter in her arms. "Shh, baby, I'm here. You're safe." "I saw it again." Grace's voice was ragged. "I saw Papa in the dark. I saw the rocks falling, and then I saw you. You were there too, and I couldn't reach you, and I'm right here." Ruth rocked her gently. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise." "I promise." Grace's breathing slowly calmed, but she didn't let go. "Mama." "Yes, baby. Are we really going to fight the bad man tomorrow?" Ruth hesitated. "We're going to tell the truth. That's all. Just the truth." "What if he hurts us?" "He won't." "But what if he does?" Grace pulled back, her eyes wide and old. "What if he hurts Mr. Elijah? What if he takes the ranch and we have to leave and everything falls apart again?" Ruth stroked her daughter's hair. "Do you remember what I told you after the church? About standing tall, proving them wrong." "That's right." Ruth took Grace's hands. "Tomorrow we're going to stand tall, all of us, and whatever happens, we'll face it together. Like a family." Exactly like a family. Grace was quiet for a moment. "I want to come." "To church?" "Of course." "No, I mean I want to come with you. When you fight him. I want to be there." Ruth's heart clenched. "Grace, it might not be safe." "I don't care." Grace's jaw set with familiar stubbornness. "He tried to scare us. He broke my window. I want him to see me. I want him to know I'm not afraid." Ruth looked at her daughter, this fierce, brave, too-old child who'd survived things no 8-year-old should face, and made a decision. "All right, you can come." Grace threw her arms around Ruth's neck. "We're going to win, Mama. I know we are." Ruth held her close. She wished she felt as certain. Sunday morning arrived with a sky that couldn't decide between snow and sun. Ruth dressed carefully, the same borrowed dress, but cleaned and pressed. She braided Grace's hair with steady hands and helped Jesse into his cleanest clothes. "Remember what we talked about." She knelt before both children. "Whatever happens in there, you stay quiet. You stay close to Connie. And no matter what anyone says, you hold your heads high." "Yes, Mama." Elijah waited by the wagon, the leather satchel containing the forged documents tucked under his arm. His face was calm, but Ruth could see the tension in his shoulders. "Ready?" "No." She climbed up beside him. "But let's do it anyway." The ride to town felt endless and instant all at once. Ruth's mind raced through every possible scenario: victory, defeat, violence, vindication. By the time the church steeple came into view, her hands were shaking. Elijah covered them with his own. "Whatever happens in there, I want you to know." "Don't." Ruth shook her head. "Don't talk like this is the end. We're going to win." "Ruth." "We're going to win, Elijah." She met his eyes. "And then you're going to marry me, and we're going to raise these children, and we're going to grow old on that ranch together. That's how this ends." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Yes, ma'am." The wagon pulled into the churchyard. Heads turned. Whispers spread. The Harding party had arrived. Cornelius Whitmore stood on the church steps, surrounded by his usual circle of admirers. His smile flickered when he saw the satchel under Elijah's arm. "Good morning, Elijah." His voice carried across the yard. "Come to make your final payment. Come to make a different kind of payment." Elijah's voice was steady. The kind you've been avoiding for 20 years. The crowd murmured. Cornelius's smile hardened. I don't know what you mean. Then let me explain. Elijah climbed the church steps, stopping one below the judge. Inside, in front of everyone, let them hear what kind of man you really are. This is a house of God, Harding, not a courthouse. No, it's better than a courthouse. Elijah's eyes burned. In a courthouse you can buy your way out. Here there's only judgment. He walked past Cornelius into the church. Ruth followed Grace and Jesse close behind Connie, bringing up the rear. The congregation turned as one. Every pew was full. Every face watched. And in that moment Ruth understood this was the fight of their lives. There was no going back now. Elijah walked down the center aisle like a man heading to his own execution. Ruth followed 3 steps behind her, heart pounding so loud she was certain everyone could hear it. Grace gripped her hand. Jessie pressed against her side. Connie brought up the rear, her face set like stone. The congregation watched in stunned silence. Reverend Whitmore stood at the pulpit, his face pale. Elijah, this is highly irregular. 5 minutes. Elijah stopped at the front of the church, turned to face the crowd. Give me 5 minutes, Reverend. Then you can throw me out if you want. The Reverend looked to his brother. Cornelius had followed them inside, his smile fixed, but his eyes dangerous. Let him speak. I'm curious what fantasy he's concocted. Elijah reached into the satchel. 20 years ago, Cornelius Whitmore came to Cedar Bluff with nothing but ambition and a talent for manipulation. He built a bank. He became a judge. He made himself indispensable to this community. He pulled out the first document. What he didn't tell you was how he did it. How many families he destroyed. How many loans he called early. How many farms he stole. Lies. Cornelius's voice rang out. Desperate lies from a desperate man. Is this a lie? Elijah held up the paper. This is the original loan document I co-signed with Harold Jennings in 1874. Harold kept a copy. His widow found it last week. Ruth watched the crowd. Some leaned forward curious. Others looked skeptical. A few, the ones who'd suffered under Whitmore's thumb, sat very still. Compare it to the document Cornelius presented to call my loan. Elijah pulled out the second paper. Notice anything different? He handed both to the Reverend. Reverend Whitmore's hands trembled as he read. His face went from pale to gray. The acceleration clause, he whispered, isn't in the original. Elijah's voice carried to every corner of the church. Because it didn't exist, Cornelius added it later. He forged Harold Jennings's signature. He created a clause out of thin air to steal my land. The congregation erupted. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Cornelius held up his hands, his face a mask of wounded innocence. This is absurd. Those documents could be fakes. Harold Jennings is dead, conveniently unable to confirm or deny anything. Then explain this. Elijah pointed to the forged document. This clause references the Banking Act of 1876. The loan was signed in May 1874, 2 years before that law existed. Silence crashed down like a hammer. Cornelius's smile flickered. A clerical error, nothing more. A clerical error that cost Harold Jennings his farm. That's cost me $2,400 I don't owe. Elijah stepped toward him. How many others, Cornelius? How many people in this room have you cheated with your clerical errors? A voice from the back. He called my brother's loan early. Peter lost everything. His wife took the children to Denver. The voice broke. He shot himself last spring. Another voice. My father's land. The Whitmore Bank took it in '79. Said he owed double what we thought. And another, he foreclosed on the Morrison place. The widow had 3 weeks to move out. Middle of winter. The voices built like a wave. Ruth watched Cornelius's face transform from confident to uncertain to something close to fear. This is a witch hunt. His voice cracked. You're all being manipulated by this man and his whore. The word landed like a slap. Ruth felt the blood drain from her face. Elijah moved before she could react. He crossed the distance between himself and Cornelius, in 3 strides, grabbed the judge by his collar, and pulled him close. Say that again. Elijah. The Reverend reached for him. Say it again. Elijah's voice was deadly quiet. I want everyone to hear what kind of man you really are. Cornelius's eyes darted to the crowd, seeking allies, finding none. I misspoke. You didn't misspeak. You showed us exactly who you are. Elijah released him with a shove. A bully, a thief, a fraud. And now everyone knows it. Cornelius straightened his collar with shaking hands. You think this changes anything? I'm still the only banker in 60 miles. I'm still the judge. You need me, all of you. We don't need you. An old farmer stood up Thomas Garrett, who'd lived in Cedar Bluff longer than anyone. We never needed you. We just didn't know we had a choice. More people stood. The schoolteacher, the blacksmith, the widow Morrison. One by one they rose from their pews. We can send to Cheyenne for a new banker. Thomas Garrett's voice was strong despite his years. We can petition the territorial governor for a new judge. What we can't do is keep pretending a snake isn't a snake. Cornelius's face contorted. You'll regret this, all of you. When the economy turns, when you need loans, when you need someone to bail you out. We'll help each other. Ruth spoke for the first time. Every head turned toward her. That's what communities do. Real communities. Not ones built on fear and debt. You. Cornelius's finger jabbed toward her. You did this. You poisoned him against me. You and your bastard children. Elijah's fist connected with Cornelius's jaw. The judge went down hard, sprawling across the church floor. Blood dripped from his split lip. Elijah. The Reverend stepped between them. This is a house of God. Then God can judge him. Elijah stood over Cornelius, breathing hard. I've made my judgment. 2 men from the congregation stepped forward, Thomas Garrett and the blacksmith. We'll hold him, Thomas said. Someone ride to Cheyenne. Fetch the territorial marshal. Cornelius struggled to his feet, dabbing at his bloody lip. You can't arrest me. I'm the judge. You're a criminal. Thomas gripped his arm. And criminals don't get to be judges. They dragged him toward the door. Ruth watched him go, her heart still racing. It was over. It was actually over. Then Cornelius twisted in his captor's grip and locked eyes with her. This isn't finished. His voice was low, meant only for her. Dirk Sloan doesn't take orders from marshals. And he owes me a favor. A cold spike of fear shot through Ruth's chest. Elijah? But Cornelius was already being hauled outside. Ruth grabbed Elijah's arm. He said something. About Dirk Sloan. About a favor. Elijah's face went pale. The children. Where are the children? Ruth spun. Grace and Jessie had been right behind her. She'd felt Jessie's hand in hers just moments ago. The pew was empty. Grace, Jessie. Her voice echoed through the church. People turned confused. They were right here. Connie pushed through the crowd. I had my eyes on them. Where are they? Ruth's voice rose to a scream. Where are my children? The church erupted into chaos. People shouted. Bodies moved. Ruth shoved through them, her heart hammering. Grace, Jessie, answer me. Nothing. She burst through the church doors into the gray morning. The wagon was gone. No, 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 no. Elijah appeared beside her, his face white. Walter. He grabbed his foreman's arm. Did you see anyone near the wagon? I wasn't watching, boss. I was inside. Think anyone near the horses? Walter's face crumpled. There was a man, scruffy, dirty coat. I thought he was just passing through. Sloan. Elijah's voice was hollow. He took them. That bastard took the children. Ruth's legs gave out. She sank to her knees in the dirt, the world spinning around her. Her children, her babies, gone. Ruth! Elijah knelt beside her, gripped her shoulders. Ruth, look at me. She couldn't. Couldn't see anything but Grace's face, Jesse's smile, the wooden horse clutched in his small hands. Ruth. Elijah shook her. I need you to focus. We're going to get them back. How? The word came out broken. He could be anywhere. He could be... He's not going far. Not with 2 children. We'll find them. Elijah pulled her to her feet. Walter, get every man on the ranch. Search the roads north and south. Check the old Jennings place, the abandoned mill, anywhere a man could hide. Yes, boss? And someone fetch the marshal from Cheyenne. Tell him it's kidnapping. People scattered. Ruth stood frozen, her mind racing through every nightmare she'd ever had, every fear, every dark possibility. He could hurt them. Her voice was barely a whisper. If he's angry about what happened to Cornelius, Sloan wants money. That's all he's ever wanted. Elijah's jaw was tight. He'll use them as leverage. Try to bargain. And if he doesn't, if he just don't. Elijah grabbed her face, forced her to meet his eyes. Don't go there. We're going to find them. We're going to bring them home. Do you hear me? I hear you. Then let's move. They rode hard for the next 3 hours. Ruth's borrowed horse labored beneath her, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Every minute that passed was another minute her children were in danger. The search parties spread across the territory north to the mountains south toward the river east and west along the main roads. But Sloan knew this land. He'd worked it for years. If he didn't want to be found... Ruth. Elijah's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. He'd reined in his horse near a fork in the road. What is it? He dismounted, crouched low. Wagon tracks, fresh, heading toward the old Miller place. The abandoned farm. It's been empty for years. Perfect place to hide. Ruth's heart lurched. Then let's go. Wait. Elijah caught her arm. If Sloan sees us coming, he might panic. Hurt the children. Then what do you suggest? I go alone. Circle around the back. You stay here and... No. Ruth pulled her arm free. I'm not sitting here while my children are in danger. Ruth, be reasonable. Don't you dare. She dismounted, faced him. Those are my children. I walked 6 miles through a blizzard for them. I'll walk through fire if I have to. Elijah stared at her. Then he nodded. Together then. But we go quiet. And if things go bad, they won't. If they do, you grab the children and run. Don't wait for me. Don't look back. Ruth wanted to argue, wanted to tell him they'd all make it out together or not at all. But she saw the look in his eyes. The same look she'd seen in the barn that first night when he'd paced because he couldn't sleep. He was willing to die for her children. All right, she whispered. But you're not dying today. That's the plan. They left the horses tied in a grove and approached the old Miller farm on foot. Ruth's breath came in short gasps. Fear exertion, desperate hope. The farmhouse materialized through the trees, sagging and gray. A wagon stood outside, the same wagon from the church. He's here. Ruth started forward. Elijah caught her. Listen. She stopped, strained her ears. A child's voice. Faint, but unmistakable. Jesse. He's crying. Ruth's nails dug into Elijah's arm. He's crying, Elijah. I hear him. His jaw was tight. Come on. Back entrance. They circled the farmhouse, moving through dead brush and fallen branches. Ruth's heart pounded so loud she was certain Sloan could hear it. The back door hung from one hinge, weathered and warped. Elijah pressed his finger to his lips. Ruth nodded. They slipped inside. The interior was dark, dusty, filled with shadows and decay. Ruth's eyes adjusted slowly. She could hear Jesse crying now clearer, and another voice rough and angry. "Shut up, boy! Shut your mouth before I give you something to cry about!" Ruth's blood turned to ice. Elijah touched her shoulder, pointed toward a doorway. They crept forward. The front room of the farmhouse had once been a parlor. Now it held only broken furniture and two terrified children. Grace sat against the wall, her arm around Jesse, her face streaked with tears, but defiant. Jesse sobbed into her shoulder, clutching the wooden horse so hard his knuckles were white. Dirk Sloan paced before them, a pistol in his hand. "Your mama and her rancher ruined everything." His voice was ragged, unhinged. "Cornelius was going to pay me, going to set me up good, and now, let us go." Grace's voice was steady despite her tears. "Mr. Elijah will find you. Mr. Elijah." Sloan spat the name. "That's what you call him, like he's your pa." He laughed, ugly and sharp. "He ain't your pa, girl. He's just some fool who took in strays 'cause he couldn't get over his dead wife." Grace flinched. Ruth's hands curled into fists. Elijah leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "I'll distract him. You get the children." "Elijah." "Trust me." He stepped through the doorway. "Dirk Sloan." Sloan spun, pistol raised. "Harding, how did you let the children go?" "The hell I will." Sloan's gun wavered between Elijah and the children. "They're my ticket out of here. Cornelius might be finished, but there's other places. Other people who'll pay for what I know." "What do you know, Dirk?" Elijah moved slowly to the side, drawing Sloan's attention away from the doorway. "How many laws Cornelius broke, how many people he cheated. I know enough to make trouble. And you think taking children is the answer? I think you don't get to lecture me." Sloan's face twisted. "You fired me, threw me out like garbage. 2 years I worked for you, and you treated me worse than a dog. I fired you because you stole from me. I took what I was owed. You took what wasn't yours, just like you're doing now." Ruth inched through the shadows toward the children. Grace saw her. Her eyes widened, but she didn't make a sound. "Good girl. Smart girl. Here's what's going to happen." Elijah's voice stayed calm even. "You're going to put down that gun. You're going to let the children walk out of here, and then you and I are going to talk about how you get out of this alive." Sloan laughed. "You think I'm stupid? The minute I let them go, you'll have me strung up." "Maybe. Or maybe I'll let you ride out, take a horse and disappear." "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't care about you, Dirk. I care about those children. Let them go, and you can have whatever head start you can manage." Ruth was almost there. 5 more feet. 4. 3. Sloan's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." "I'm desperate. There's a difference." Jesse sniffled loudly. Sloan's head snapped toward the sound and saw Ruth. "What the—" Everything happened at once. Sloan swung the pistol toward Ruth. Elijah lunged forward. Grace screamed. Jesse wailed. Ruth threw herself over both children, her body a shield between them and the gun. A shot rang out. Pain exploded in Ruth's shoulder. She heard Elijah shout, heard the sounds of struggle bodies hitting the floor, fists connecting with flesh. But all she could see were her children's faces inches from her own. "Mama!" Grace's voice was shrill with terror. "Mama, you're bleeding." "I'm okay, baby." The words came through gritted teeth. "I'm okay." She wasn't okay. The pain was white-hot, spreading from her shoulder down her arm. Blood soaked through her dress, dark and wet. But she was alive, and her children were safe. Behind her, the sounds of struggle stopped. "Ruth!" Elijah's voice ragged and desperate. "Ruth, are you—" "I'm hit." She tried to sit up and nearly blacked out. "The children! Are the children—" "We're okay, Mama." Grace was crying now, really crying, her defiance finally broken. "We're okay." Elijah appeared above her, his face bloodied, his eyes wild. "How bad?" "I don't know." Ruth's vision swam. "Hurts." The bullet went through. Elijah's hands pressed against her shoulder, gentle but firm, trying to stop the bleeding. "We need to get you to a doctor." "Sloan?" "Unconscious, possibly dead. I don't care which." Elijah's voice cracked. "God, Ruth, you stepped in front of a gun. My children." The words were harder to form now. The world was getting darker at the edges. "Had to protect my children. Our children." Elijah's face was wet. Was he crying? She'd never seen him cry. "They're our children, Ruth. And you're not dying. Do you hear me? You're not dying." Wasn't planning on it. She tried to smile. The darkness was pulling at her now, heavy and warm. "Just need to rest." "Ruth, stay with me." Jesse's voice small and terrified. "Is Mama going to be okay?" Grace's voice trying to be brave. "She'll be okay. She has to be okay." Elijah's voice breaking. "She will. I promise you. She will." Ruth wanted to tell them not to worry. Wanted to tell them she loved them. Wanted to tell Elijah that yes, she would marry him. And yes, she would grow old with him. And yes, yes, yes. But the darkness won. The last thing she heard was Jesse's voice whispering into the void. "Please don't leave us, Mama. Please don't leave." Then nothing. Ruth woke to warmth. Real warmth, not the cold half-comfort of borrowed quilts, but deep enveloping heat. She tried to open her eyes and found they weighed 1,000 pounds. Voices filtered through the darkness. "Lost a lot of blood." "Bullet missed the bone, thank God." "Needs rest at least a week before." Children won't leave her side. Children. Ruth's eyes flew open. "Grace. Jesse." "Easy." Hands pressed her back against the pillow. Connie's face swam into focus, worried but relieved. "They're fine. They're right here." Ruth turned her head too fast, the world spun, and saw them. Grace sat in a chair beside the bed, dark circles under her eyes, her hand wrapped around Ruth's fingers. Jesse lay curled at the foot of the bed, the wooden horse clutched to his chest, finally asleep. "They refused to leave." Connie's voice was soft. "Grace hasn't slept in 2 days. She said she had to watch over you. Had to make sure you kept breathing." Ruth's throat tightened. "How long?" 3 days. Another voice, deeper, rougher. Elijah stood in the doorway, his face haggard, his clothes unchanged from the confrontation. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 72 hours. 3 days, he repeated. "You've been in and out. Fever spiked twice. The doctor said..." His voice broke. "The doctor said we'd know by today whether you'd..." He couldn't finish. Ruth held out her good hand. He crossed the room in 2 strides, fell to his knees beside the bed, pressed his forehead to her fingers. "I thought I lost you." The words came out muffled, broken. "When you stepped in front of that gun when the shot rang out. I'm here." Ruth ran her fingers through his hair, feeling how he trembled. "I'm here, Elijah. You could have died. I didn't. But you could have." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "And it would have been my fault. I should have protected you. I should have..." "You did protect us." Ruth cupped his face in her hand. "You found us. You stopped Sloan. You brought us home. I was too slow. If I'd been faster..." "Stop!" Her voice was firm despite her weakness. "I made a choice. I put myself between that gun and my children because that's what mothers do. It wasn't your fault, Elijah. It was my decision." "Our children." His hand covered hers. "You said they're your children. But they're mine too now. Ours. That's what you told me." "I remember." "Then you understand why I can't lose you." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Any of you. I've buried a wife and a son. I can't do it again. I can't. You won't have to. Ruth pulled him closer slowly, carefully mindful of her wounded shoulder. I'm not going anywhere, Elijah Harding. You promised me a proposal. Remember, a real one, not made out of desperation. A ghost of a smile crossed his ravaged face. You remember that? I remember everything. Grace stirred in her chair, her eyes fluttering open. Mama? I'm awake, baby. I'm okay. Grace burst into tears. It wasn't the quiet, controlled crying Ruth had seen before. This was the full release of 3 days of terror. Huge, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Ruth opened her arms. Grace climbed into the bed, careful of Ruth's shoulder, and buried her face against her mother's chest. I thought you were dead. The words came between sobs. There was so much blood, and you wouldn't wake up. And I prayed and prayed and... Shh. Ruth stroked her hair. I heard you. I heard all of you. You did. I heard Jesse asking me not to leave. I heard Elijah promising you I'd be okay. Ruth kissed the top of her daughter's head. I heard you being brave. So brave, Grace Ellen. I wasn't brave. I was scared. That's what brave is, remember. Being scared and fighting anyway. Grace hiccuped, her sobs slowly subsiding. Jesse woke at the foot of the bed, confused and groggy. Mama, come here, baby. He crawled up beside her, tucking himself against her good side, the wooden horse pressed between them. Ruth lay there, surrounded by her children. Elijah's hand still clasped in hers, and felt something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Whole. What happened to Sloan? She asked quietly. Elijah's jaw tightened. Dead. I didn't mean to kill him, but... He shook his head. When I saw you go down, saw the blood, I lost control. Are you in trouble? The marshal called it self-defense. Several witnesses from town arrived right after. They saw you bleeding, saw the children. He paused. No one's shedding tears over Dirk Sloan. And Cornelius? In custody in Cheyenne. The territorial governor sent a special prosecutor. They found more evidence in the bank-forged documents going back 15 years. Elijah's voice hardened. He's finished. Even if he escapes prison, he'll never set foot in Cedar Bluff again. Ruth closed her eyes. It was over. Really, truly over. Rest now. Elijah squeezed her hand. You need to sleep. Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere. Ruth drifted back into darkness, but this time it was warm. This time she wasn't afraid. 2 weeks passed before Ruth could stand without help. The bullet had done more damage than anyone wanted to admit. The doctor came every other day, changing bandages, checking for infection, shaking his head at Ruth's stubborn refusal to stay in bed. You're the worst patient I've ever had, he told her on the 14th day. I have a ranch to help run. You have a hole in your shoulder that's still healing. Same thing. Elijah watched from the doorway, trying not to smile. She won't listen to me either, Doc. Then you're both fools. The doctor packed his bag. Keep the wound clean. No lifting, no riding. And for God's sake, woman, let someone else do the work for once. He left, muttering about stubborn frontier women. Ruth waited until his wagon disappeared down the road before turning to Elijah. Help me up. Ruth, I've been in this bed for 2 weeks. I'm going stir-crazy. Just help me to the porch, please. He couldn't refuse her. He never could. His arm wrapped around her waist, gentle and strong, as he guided her through the house. Each step sent ripples of pain through her shoulder, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. The porch. Ruth sank into the rocking chair and let out a breath she'd been holding for days. Better? Much. The ranch spread before her, cattle in the distance, horses in the paddock, Jesse chasing chickens near the coop, while Grace pretended not to watch him. Home. The word settled into her chest like a heartbeat. Elijah. Yes. You said when this was over you'd propose properly. He went still beside her. I did say that. Well? Ruth kept her eyes on the horizon. It's over. Silence stretched between them. Then Elijah laughed a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep and long unused. You're not going to let me do this my way, are you? When have I ever let you do anything your way? He knelt beside her chair, taking her good hand in both of his. Ruth Ellen Crawford, I had a speech prepared. I've been practicing it for 2 weeks while you were recovering. I had every word memorized. And now? Now I can't remember a single one. He shook his head. All I can think about is the way you looked when you stepped in front of that gun. The way my heart stopped. The way I swore to God that if you lived, I'd never waste another day. Ruth's throat tightened. So here's what I know. Elijah's voice was rough with emotion. I know I love you. I know I love those children like they're my own blood. I know this ranch means nothing without you in it, just buildings and dirt and animals that don't matter. He reached into his pocket. This was Martha's. A ring glinted in the afternoon light, simple gold band with a small diamond worn smooth by years on another woman's finger. I thought about buying something new, something that was only ours. But then I realized Martha would have wanted this. She would have wanted her ring to mean something again. Ruth stared at the ring, her vision blurring. Elijah. Ruth Ellen Crawford. His voice steadied. Will you marry me? Will you let me be a husband to you and a father to Grace and Jesse? Will you help me fill this house with noise and life and everything I've been missing for 6 years? Ruth looked at him, this weathered, grieving, impossible man who'd opened his gate to 3 strangers in a blizzard and changed everything. Yes. The word came out simple, certain, true. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll let you be their father. Yes to all of it. Elijah slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Mama. Grace's voice rang across the yard. She was running toward them, Jesse struggling to keep up behind her. Mama, did Mr. Elijah ask you? Did you say yes? Ruth held up her hand, the ring catching the light. Grace shrieked with joy. Jesse reached them a moment later, panting, his face flushed. Does this mean we get to stay forever? Elijah lifted the boy into his arms. Forever, and then some sun. And you're really going to be our pa, really truly? Really truly? Jesse threw his arms around Elijah's neck and held on like he'd never let go. Grace approached Ruth more slowly, her eyes on the ring. It's pretty. It was Martha's. Grace looked up sharply. His wife? Yes. A moment of silence. Ruth held her breath, unsure how her daughter would react. That's good. Grace nodded slowly. It means she's part of the family too, even if she's gone. Ruth's heart swelled. That's exactly right, baby. Grace smiled, the first full, unguarded smile Ruth had seen from her in months. Can I tell Connie she's going to cry? She cries about everything happy. Go ahead. Grace ran toward the house, shouting the news. Elijah sat on the porch railing, Jesse still in his arms. She's right, you know. Connie's going to cry. So am I, probably. Ruth wiped her eyes. I already am. Good tears. The best kind. From inside the house, Connie's wail of joy echoed across the ranch. Grace was right. She did cry about everything happy. 3 weeks later, the spring thaw began. Ruth stood at the kitchen window, watching water drip from the eaves. Her shoulder had healed enough to manage light work. Nothing heavy, nothing strenuous, but enough to feel useful again. The Reverend sent word. Elijah appeared behind her, wrapping his arms carefully around her waist. Sunday after next, if you're ready. For the wedding? No, for a square dance. He kissed her temple. Yes, for the wedding. Ruth leaned back against him. I'm ready. I've been ready. Connie's already planning the food. I think she invited the entire territory. Good. Let them come. Let them see. Elijah turned her to face him. See what? That we won. Ruth's eyes blazed with quiet triumph. That everything Cornelius tried to destroy is stronger than before. That we survived. We did more than survive. Yes. She smiled. We did. A knock at the door interrupted them. Elijah frowned. Expecting anyone? No. He went to answer it. Ruth heard voices low, uncertain, and then Elijah reappeared with two unexpected guests. Reverend Whitmore and his wife, Prudence. Ruth stiffened. Prudence Whitmore was the last person she wanted to see. The woman whose daughter had called Grace trash. The woman who'd screamed for Ruth's arrest in the churchyard. Mrs. Crawford. Prudence's voice was thin, strained. We came to... My wife has something to say. The Reverend's hand rested on Prudence's back, firm but gentle. I'll wait outside. He left. Prudence stood in the kitchen looking smaller than Ruth remembered. Older. The feathered hat was gone, replaced by a simple bonnet. I don't expect you to forgive me. The words came out rushed, rehearsed. What I did, what Charlotte did, it was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I was doing it, but She stopped, took a breath. My husband loved your Elijah's wife before I ever met him. Did you know that? Ruth nodded slowly. For 20 years, I've lived with that knowledge, wondering if I was second choice, wondering if he wished he'd married her instead. Prudence's voice cracked. When I heard about you, a beautiful widow living in Elijah's house, all I could see was another Martha, another woman, who was better than me. Ruth's anger softened slightly. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I know that now. Prudence wiped her eyes. I know because I watched you step in front of a gun for your children. I watched you nearly die protecting them. And I realized that's not someone trying to steal another woman's place. That's just a mother. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. This is for your girl, for Grace. Ruth unwrapped it carefully. A doll. Porcelain face, real hair, a dress of blue silk. It was Charlotte's. She has too many. And I thought... Prudence's voice broke. I thought maybe it could be a start, an apology she could hold. Ruth stared at the doll, then at the woman who'd tormented her family for weeks. Why now? Why not before? Because my husband's brother is in prison. Prudence's laugh was bitter. Because I finally saw what cruelty looks like when it comes home to roost. Cornelius destroyed dozens of families with his schemes, and I stood by him. I defended him. She couldn't continue. Ruth set down the doll and did something she never expected to do. She took Prudence Whitmore's hands. I can't forget what happened, but I can try to forgive. Ruth's voice was steady. If you're willing to start over, really start over then. So am I. Prudence's tears flowed freely now. Thank you. I don't deserve... Nobody deserves grace. That's why it's called grace. The two women stood in the kitchen, enemies transformed into something fragile and new. Not friends, not yet, but no longer enemies either. Will you come to the wedding? Ruth asked. Prudence looked up, startled. You'd want me there. I want the whole town to see what forgiveness looks like. To see that this community can heal. A moment of silence. I'll be there. Prudence wiped her face. We'll all be there. After she left, Elijah came back inside. What was that about? Ruth picked up the doll, ran her fingers over the silk dress. A beginning. The night before the wedding, Ruth couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that had led to this moment. The blizzard, the gate, the offer that changed everything. The fear, the hope, the blood and terror and joy. A soft knock at her door. "Come in." Grace slipped through her nightgown, trailing behind her. "Mama, are you awake?" "I'm awake." Ruth shifted over, making room. "Can't sleep?" "No." Grace climbed into bed beside her. "I keep thinking about tomorrow." "Nervous?" "A little." Grace was quiet for a moment. "Mama, can I tell you something?" "Anything." "When Papa died, I was so angry. At him for leaving. At God for taking him. At you for not stopping it." Grace's voice was small. "I know that doesn't make sense. You couldn't have stopped anything. But I was so angry." Ruth pulled her daughter close. "I was angry too, baby. And then when we came here, when Mr. Elijah took us in, I was angry at him too, for not being Papa, for trying to take Papa's place. He's not trying to replace your father." "I know." Grace nodded against Ruth's shoulder. "I know that now. Papa's Papa. He'll always be Papa, but Mr. Elijah is—" She struggled for words. "He's different. He's not a replacement. He's something new. He loves you very much." "I know." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Mama." "Yes. I love him too. Is that okay?" Ruth's heart cracked open with joy. "That's more than okay, baby. That's wonderful. Will Papa be mad in heaven?" "No." Ruth kissed her daughter's forehead. "Papa wants you to be happy. He wants all of us to be happy. That's what love means, wanting the people you love to find joy even when you can't be there to share it." Grace sniffled. "I miss him." "I miss him too. Every day. But I'm glad we came here." "So am I." They lay together in the darkness, mother and daughter, grief and hope tangled together like threads in a quilt. "Mama." "Yes, baby." "I think tomorrow's going to be a good day." Ruth smiled. "I think so too." The wedding morning dawned clear and bright. Ruth stood before the mirror in her bedroom, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. Connie had worked magic with a bolt of white fabric, not quite a traditional wedding dress, but beautiful nonetheless. Simple, elegant, perfect for a frontier bride who'd walked through fire to reach this day. "Mama, you look beautiful." Grace stood in the doorway, her own dress new and blue, the doll Prudence had given her clutched in her arms. "So do you, baby. Connie braided my hair special. See?" Ruth saw her daughter transformed from a frightened girl into something stronger, hopeful, ready for whatever came next. "Mr. Elijah's waiting downstairs. He looks nervous." "Good, he should be." "Why?" Ruth smiled. "Because he's about to become your father. That's a big responsibility." "I already told him I'd be good." "You did?" "Uh-huh. Last night when he was pacing on the porch, I went out and told him he didn't need to be scared because I'd help him. With being a PA, I mean." Ruth's eyes burned. "What did he say?" "He said he was counting on it. Then he hugged me really tight. I think he might have cried a little, but I pretended not to notice." "That was kind of you. That's what family does, right? Pretends not to notice the crying." Ruth laughed, a full, free laugh that felt like flying. That's exactly what family does. Elijah waited at the bottom of the stairs, his Sunday best pressed and clean, his face pale with nerves. Jessie stood beside him, clutching the wooden horse, and looking so serious, Ruth almost laughed again. "You ready?" Elijah's voice was rough. "I've been ready for months." "Then let's go get married." The church was packed. Every pew held bodies. Ranchers and farmers, shopkeepers and teachers, old-timers and newcomers. Thomas Garrett sat in the front row, his weathered face split in a rare smile. The school teacher dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Even Prudence Whitmore sat near the back, her expression softer than Ruth had ever seen it. The Reverend stood at the altar, his Bible open, waiting. Ruth walked down the aisle on no one's arm. She'd chosen that deliberately, no one giving her away, no one handing her over like property. She walked alone, because that's how she'd arrived at Elijah's gate. Alone and desperate and determined to survive. But she wasn't alone anymore. Grace and Jesse walked behind her, their small hands clasped together. Connie followed carrying flowers from the garden. Elijah watched her come, his eyes wet, his smile trembling. When she reached him, he took her hands. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "You're biased." "Completely. Don't care." The Reverend cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Elijah Thomas Harding and Ruth Ellen Crawford. If anyone has reason to object to this union, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." Silence. Ruth half expected someone to stand. After everything they'd been through, she wouldn't have been surprised. No one moved. "Then let us proceed." The vows were simple traditional words spoken by thousands of couples before them. But Ruth heard something different in them today. Promises made stronger by the trials they'd survived. Commitments deepened by loss and resurrection. "I, Elijah, take you, Ruth, to be my wife. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part. I, Ruth, take you, Elijah, to be my husband. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part." The ring. Martha's ring. Now Ruth's slid onto her finger for the second time. But this time, it was in front of witnesses. This time, it was official. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The Reverend smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Elijah kissed her. The church erupted in applause. Grace and Jesse rushed forward, throwing their arms around both of them. Connie sobbed into her handkerchief. Thomas Garrett whistled between his teeth. And Ruth held on to her husband, her children, her family, and let herself believe that happy endings were real. The reception unfolded in the churchyard. Tables groaned with food, Connie's cooking, plus contributions from half the town. Fiddle music filled the air. Children ran between the tables, shrieking with laughter. Ruth sat with Elijah, watching the celebration swirl around them. "We did it. We did. No more running. No more hiding. No more fear. No." Elijah's arm tightened around her. "No more." Thomas Garrett approached, his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Harding, Mr. Harding, I wanted to say—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "What you did, standing up to Cornelius, taking that bullet for your children, it meant something to this town. It reminded us what courage looks like." "We just did what we had to do," Ruth said. "Maybe, but you did it when most folks would have run." Thomas nodded firmly. "Cedar Bluff won't forget. And if you ever need anything at all, you just ask." He walked away. Elijah watched him go. "You've made quite an impression." "We made an impression, together." "Fair enough." Grace ran up, breathless with excitement. "Mama, Pa, the fiddler wants to know if you're going to dance." Elijah stood, held out his hand. "Well, are we—" Ruth took his hand. "I thought I wasn't supposed to exert myself." "Doctor's not here. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." They danced. It was clumsy. Ruth's shoulder protested. Elijah's feet weren't made for fancy moves, but it was perfect. They held each other close and swayed to the music while the whole town watched. "I love you, Mrs. Harding." "I love you too, Mr. Harding." "Ready for the rest of our lives." "I've been ready since you said, 'I'll take you too.'" He pulled her closer. "I meant it then. I mean it now. I'll keep meaning it until I take my last breath." "Promise." Promise. The music swelled. The sun began to set. And Ruth Ellen Harding, formerly Crawford, formerly desperate, formerly alone, danced with her husband while her children laughed. And the community that had nearly destroyed them celebrated their survival. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Ruth stood on the porch of her home. Her home. Not borrowed. Not temporary. Hers. Elijah joined her, wrapping a quilt around both of their shoulders. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the woman who walked up to your gate 3 months ago." Ruth leaned against him. "She seems like a stranger now." "She's not a stranger. She's still you. But different. Stronger. Maybe." Ruth watched the stars emerge. "Definitely tired." Elijah laughed softly. "Come to bed, wife. Wife." The words settled into her bones like warmth. "In a minute. I just want to remember this." Remember what? This feeling. This moment. The exact instant when everything finally felt right. She closed her eyes and breathed it in the cool night air, the smell of pine and wood smoke, the solid warmth of the man beside her, the knowledge that her children slept safe inside. Ruth. When you showed up at my gate, I was ready to die. Not actively, but I'd stopped caring about tomorrow. Stopped seeing the point. I know. You saved me. You and Grace and Jesse. You reminded me what living feels like. Ruth opened her eyes. You saved us too. We came to you with nothing. Less than nothing. And you gave us everything. I gave you a roof and food. You gave us a family. Ruth turned to face him. You gave me hope. Do you know how long it had been since I felt hope? Really felt it, not just pretended. Elijah's eyes glistened in the starlight. I love you, Ruth. I love you too. Forever. Forever. He kissed her soft, gentle, full of promise. Then he led her inside into the warmth, into the life they'd built together. The bedroom door closed, and in the children's room down the hall, Grace whispered to Jesse in the darkness. Are you awake? Yeah. Today was good, wasn't it? The best. Grace smiled at the ceiling. We have a family now, a real one. I know. Jesse clutched his wooden horse, the one Pa had given him that first morning. Grace? What? I'm not scared anymore. Grace reached across the space between their beds and found his hand. Me neither. They fell asleep holding hands, two children who'd walked through a blizzard and found their way home. In the barn, Biscuit, the old mare, nickered softly in her sleep. In the coop, 17 hens settled on their roosts. In the fields beyond, cattle lowed at the rising moon. The Harding Ranch, once a monument to grief, now a testament to second chances, settled into the quiet of a Wyoming night. And in the main bedroom, Ruth lay against her husband's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his arms around her, knowing with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Elijah. Thank you. For what? For seeing me, that first day. You could have turned us away. You could have taken the children and sent me off to die, but you saw me. I saw a woman willing to sacrifice everything for her children. I saw courage. I saw someone worth saving. And now? He tightened his arms around her. Now I see my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, the woman I'll love for the rest of my days. Ruth smiled in the darkness. That's a good answer. I've been practicing. I can tell. She kissed his chest, settled deeper into his embrace, and let her eyes close. Tomorrow there would be work. Cattle to tend, accounts to manage, children to raise, a life to build. Tomorrow and all the days after, stretching out like a promise she finally believed in. But tonight, there was only this: warmth, safety, love, home. Some families are born of blood, bound by history and name. Others are forged in fire, built by choice, by hands that reach across the gap between loneliness and love, by hearts brave enough to begin again. The Harding family was born in a blizzard, baptized by tears, tested by enemies who wanted them destroyed. They survived not because they were lucky, but because they chose each other. Again and again, in every moment that mattered, they chose each other. And in the Wyoming Territory, in the spring of 1879, on a ranch where grief once reigned, life bloomed again. One sunrise at a time, one laugh at a time, one love at a time, forever.